to email me or call me or text me. So now we're going to move into altered states of consciousness. Now, the first person who kind of came up with the whole idea that there was a difference between our conscious and our unconscious, remember, was Freud. And Freud believed that there were three levels of consciousness, and that these three levels, he said that they were like an iceberg. So if you think of an iceberg, so when we have an iceberg, we have the tip of the iceberg, which is the very small part of the iceberg, is above the surface. And then we have the water, and then we have below the surface. So for Freud, he said that our conscious awareness is above the surface. That's like our working memory. That's what we're thinking about right now. That's what's in your mind, in your thoughts. All of that is your conscious awareness, that which is above the surface. Just below the surface is what he called our preconscious. Our preconscious is the information in our memory that we can get to. So if I asked you what you had for dinner last night and you could remember that, he would say that information is here in our preconscious. If I asked you what you did on your fifth birthday and you could remember that, that would be in your preconscious. And then when you bring it to awareness, you're taking it out of your preconscious and putting it into your conscious mind or your thoughts, what you're currently thinking of. And then the unconscious is this big part down here. The unconscious is the part of the mind that we can't get to, the part of our memory that we can't get to. Things that make us uncomfortable are, we've talked before about our instincts like sex and aggression are down here in our unconscious because they make us uncomfortable. They create anxiety for us. So we keep them down here. And the things in our unconscious mind affect us. In fact, for Freud, he believed that just like the iceberg, it was the bigger part that actually controlled where the iceberg went, is actually controlled what's in our mind and what we think about. And so that's the unconscious mind, but we're unaware of it. So for Freud, he was the first one who really talked about the fact that we have this big unconscious mind here that is affecting us. It's when we say things, we don't know where we came from, or we don't know why we're doing what we're doing, because the information it's causing us is in our unconscious mind. So for Freud, our consciousness, three levels: conscious, preconscious, unconscious. And again, when we get later in the semester into abnormal psych and therapies, we'll talk more about Freud and how this whole model comes up again. Okay, so then when we talk about consciousness, we talk a lot about altered states of consciousness. Altered states of consciousness are states in which we alter our consciousness for some reason. We often do this to ourselves. Sleep is an altered state of consciousness because we're conscious. Our brain doesn't turn off when we sleep. None of our body turns off when we sleep. And our senses are still picking up things, but our consciousness, our awareness is altered in some way. Hypnosis alters our consciousness. Drugs and alcohol alter our consciousness. There's all kinds of things that can alter our consciousness. We're going to start with sleep because we spend most of our lives sleeping. It is part of our lives that we do. Most people don't have to think about it. We just lay down, we go to sleep, no problem. We spend about 1/3 of our time sleeping. And now, because we have labs, we have sleep labs. And what they do with the sleep lab is you come in and they hook you up to electrodes and they're measuring your brain waves, they're measuring your respiration, your heart rate, everything that's going on with your sleep. And what they have found is that we go through different stages of sleep. We have REM sleep, which stands for rapid eye movement. Partly it's called that because your eyes are moving rapidly back and forth when you're in that state of sleep. And the other stage of sleep or state of sleep is non-REM sleep. They got real creative there. But we start out in non-REM sleep, and non-REM sleep is divided up into 4 stages. So we have stage 1, 2, 3, and 4, and then we have REM. And what we do is we start our night in non-REM sleep. We start in stage 1 and 2. This is the very light sleep that we go through, and often we kind of maybe can still hear things that are going on. We're a little more aware of what's happening, but we're kind of like in this twilight sleep. It's just kind of a very light sleep. Then we go into stage 3 and 4 sleep. 3 and 4 are very deep sleep. This is the deepest sleep that we have, and this is when we're pretty much unaware of what's going on. It's very hard for us to wake up from deep sleep. And then we go into REM sleep. REM sleep is our brain waves are like we're awake and resting. So our minds are very alert when we're in REM sleep. And we dream here in REM sleep. About 85% of the time, we're dreaming in REM sleep. So when you go to a sleep lab and they hook you up and they can tell that you're in REM sleep, they wake you up. Most of the time, you're sleeping. If they wake you up in any of the non REM sleeps, it's about 10-15% of the time we'll be dreaming, but the dreams aren't as vivid or as clear, less likely to be remembered as they are in REM sleep. REM sleep is also called paradoxical sleep because when we're in REM sleep, although our mind is very active, again, as if we're awake, our eyes are moving rapidly back and forth, but our large muscles, our arms and legs are paralyzed. Not literally paralyzed, but it's as if we cannot move them, which is a good thing because in REM sleep, when we're dreaming, if this did not happen, we would get up and act out our dreams all over the place, and that would not be good. So we need that to happen. For some people, the mechanism doesn't work. For children, young children, it's more likely for them to sleepwalk. And this is why, because we believe that this mechanism that paralyzes our large muscles isn't working correctly. With older people, sometimes it's believed that it wears out. So we see a lot of elderly people sleepwalking as well because they get into REM sleep and those large muscles aren't paralyzed. Now, some people will experience, and maybe some of you do, sleep paralysis. This is what happens when we're in REM sleep because we're usually in REM sleep right before we wake up. So you're in REM sleep, your brain is very active, maybe you're dreaming, your large muscles are paralyzed, and then you start waking up, but your brain wakes up before the rest of your body does. And so you're awake, but you can't move. And it can be very scary. It only lasts usually a few seconds, but it can be very scary if you've been through it. You just have to remember that just give it a few seconds, it'll wear off, and then you'll be able to move. But that's a common problem that people have sometimes. Now, the whole sleep cycle takes about 90 minutes. So we start in stage 1, we go to stage 2, stage 3 and 4, very deep sleep, and then we go into REM sleep, then we go back into stage 1 sleep. Now, I've put another link in here, another YouTube video, which was the video that I would be showing you in class, and it goes into a lot of detail. Sleep in it talks about these different stages. It has people in sleep labs where they can see what stage of sleep they're in. And what they've done in some of these studies is that because when someone's in a sleep lab, we know what stage of sleep that they're in. So what we do is we wake them up in particular stages of sleep to see what happens. Okay. If we wake them up during deep sleep, so they go into very deep sleep, they wake them up, then they go back to sleep, and then once they get into deep sleep, they wake them up again all night long. They're depriving them of deep sleep. It can have an astounding effect on us. And you'll see in the video what happens. It can cause you to become pre-diabetic. It can make you hungry. We're hungrier when we're tired. All these things that sleep can affect. Now, with REM sleep, again, when they wake people up in REM sleep, they're usually dreaming, and it is a lighter sleep. As we go through the night, as we cycle through the 7, 8 hours, 9 hours of sleep that we go through, we end up spending more time in REM sleep and less time in non-REM sleep. Children spend more time in deep sleep than adults do. So as we get older, we spend less and less time in deep sleep. So we believe that this could have to do with the growth process. Some people say it's like that's why people age. If we could get people to spend more time in deep sleep, the aging process would not happen the same. Okay, so we did that. Again, slow wave sleep stage 3 and 4 are called slow wave sleep. And again, more children spend more time here um, than adults do. We know that REM sleep is very important because when they put people in these sleep studies and they deprive them of REM sleep, so they watch their brain waves, and then the minute they go into REM sleep, they wake them up, and then again, then they go back to sleep. When they get into REM sleep, they wake them up. They have more difficulty with learning and remembering things. And we know that when people are learning new information, they spend more time in REM sleep than they would. We know that sleep is important to transfer information from our into our long-term memory. So it's very important when you're studying, especially when you're studying for an exam, that you get some sleep. I know students think if I just stay up all night, it'll be better. But actually, when you sleep, that information is being transferred into your long term memory, which is what you're going to need for the test. So it's important. All sleep is all important. If we are deprived of sleep, we're hungrier, we eat more. If we're deprived of sleep, it depletes our immune system. We're more likely to get sick. We don't remember as well. So, sleep is very important in those aspects. We know that it's important. For many other things, we're not sure why, because none of the body sleeps. Think about it. Your brain is still working. All of your organs are still working. Everything is still working when you're sleeping. So the question then becomes, what would happen if we deprived somebody of sleep? What would happen if we just wouldn't let them go to sleep? And in one study, they deprived a guy of sleep for 11 days. 11 days. He he wasn't allowed to sleep. Every minute that he just sat down, go ahead. Go ahead, sorry. um, every time he would sit down, he would fall asleep. So he had to just keep moving and just keep moving and just keep moving. Finally, when he did sleep, they let him sleep. He slept for about 15 hours, woke up, said he felt fine. Now, there are some people and some illnesses where people cannot sleep and they do die. It's usually because I'm not sure if it's because of the sleep is very important. Um, we know that if know everybody sleep for sometimes kind of cranky. We don't. Well, go ahead.
It's okay.
Okay. Trouble focusing, irritability, all these things occur when we don't sleep or we deprive ourselves of sleep. Now, you have to remember if you miss one night of sleep, you're going to be okay. So the more you think, I need to sleep, I need to sleep, I need to sleep, the less, because we know that when they're in REM sleep from their brain waves. Now, there are a difference between what we call nightmares and night terrors. A nightmare happens during REM sleep. Most nightmares wake us up. We can remember nightmares. And so it's, something that's happening here. Night terrors occur in deep sleep. So we don't wake up. Um, Both adults and children have night terrors. It's more common with children, probably because they spend more time in deep sleep, but adults spend time in deep sleep as well. And so we can have a night terror. When a night terror occurs, it's as if the person is having a nightmare, but they don't wake up because they're in deep sleep, so they don't wake up. If you wake them up and you ask them and tell them, it's okay, you're just dreaming, don't worry about it, they won't remember the dream at all. They screaming and yelling and thrashing around like they're trying to fight somebody off. It's best to just let them sleep through. They'll just go back into sleep. The night terror will end. If you wake them up, it doesn't do any good because they can't remember anything. The next morning, they're not going to remember anything. So going to do the next day. So they're pretty unemotional, uneventful. So, that's just kind of how our dreams occur. Um, Now, there's lots of different theories about dreams in interpretation of dreams. Freud, of course, was one of the first. He said that our dreams was our unconscious mind trying to get out. So he believed that dreams were very important. But he believed that our dreams came in symbols. Now, he talks about two parts of our dream, what he calls the manifest content and the latent content. The manifest content is what we're actually seeing in the dream. So if you see a train in the dream, that's the manifest content. The latent content is the underlying theme of the dream or the symbolism of the dream. Now, Freud, again, he was all about sex. He said that we have, I think, 19 a penis. He said that when we sometimes, like if again, he was, back in the early 1900s. So if you had a dream that you were on a train and the train went through a tunnel, yeah, that was a sex dream. Okay, so everything in Freud, because it was the unconscious again trying to come to the conscious awareness, and that was what that was all about with the latent content. Okay. Some basic facts. Does everybody dream? Yes, although again, you might not remember them. But again, if you went to a sleep lab, they woke you up in REM sleep, you would be dreaming. At least some of the time you were dreaming. Dreams last in pretty much in real time. So if you felt like you were dreaming for 10 minutes, you probably were dreaming for 10 minutes. The environment can be incorporated in our dream. So if someone sprays you with water while you're in REM sleep, it's likely you'll dream of rain or something to do with water. Because again, all of our senses are still working. So that information is still getting sent to the brain, even though the brain is in REM sleep and it's dreaming. Maybe you've heard this before that when people dream, uh, the old saying that if you dream that you're falling off a cliff and you hit bottom, then you'll die. Okay. So most people, when they're dreaming they're falling off a cliff, they wake up before they get there. Now, is that true? Do we don't know. Do people die in their sleep? Absolutely. Can we wake them up and say, were you dreaming of falling and you hit bottom and that's why you died? No, we can't do that. So anything is possible, but we do know that there are also some people, and maybe this happened to you, that they dream they're falling off a cliff, they hit bottom, and they don't die. They do wake up. So we don't know that that's obviously always true. Now, what about daydreams? Daydreams are a form of an altered state of consciousness because when we're daydreaming, our mind is somewhere else and it's not, although information is coming into our senses, it's really not registering. Everybody daydreams. Daydreams are important daydreams, and there's three purposes for daydreams. The first purpose is, the first purpose of a daydream is to escape. We're in a situation we don't want to be there. We're bored. We're anxious. We don't like it. It's like, so we just go into a daydream, into a place that helps us to escape the situation that we're in. People in solitary confinement will often do this. They put themselves in their head somewhere else. They escape the situation. Daydreams also help us to change our mood. Have a nice, pleasant daydream, and that can change our mood and put us in a different, state of mind. Third, we can try at least to solve problems when we're daydreaming. We will I'm going to say that, but if they don't say that and they say this, then I'm going to say that, and we kind of work it out, in our head. So we do a lot of problem solving in our daydreams. So daydreams are important. Everybody does it. It's healthy. It's not a problem. Okay, so this is where I would show the video on sleep that kind of goes over all of that. And then the last thing that we're going to talk about as far as sleep goes is sleep disorders. There are certain disorders that affect our sleep. Insomnia is probably the most common. 15% of adults have insomnia. This is a reoccurring problem sleeping. Now, some people with insomnia have trouble getting to sleep. They can't fall asleep. Some people with insomnia have trouble staying asleep. And so there's two different kinds of insomnia. Many people who have insomnia tend not to last a whole 8 hours. Alcohol wears off. Other things, other sleeping medications usually have like Benadryl in them that gets us to sleep. And they also interfere with REM sleep, which is not a good thing either, because we know when we're deprived of REM sleep, the next night when you're learning things, and to not drink alcohol or use those medications because they will interfere with REM sleep and we won't be able to remember things because we need that for our memory. So if you're trying to, if you do have trouble with insomnia, you need to remember a few things. One, don't take a nap, obviously, during the day. Cut back on caffeine, no caffeine in the afternoon, because again, caffeine is meant to keep us awake. Don't eat before you go to bed. In fact, you shouldn't eat about digest food. And two, food wakes us up. It wakes our body up. We have to digest it. That gets everything going, and we need our body to be relaxed before we go to sleep. Don't exercise about 2 hours before you want to go to sleep because again, exercise does the same thing. It wakes us up. It wakes our body up, gets everything going. We need our body to be relaxed and calm and not woke up. The one food that's okay is milk or turkey. They have chemical in them that will help induce sleep. So now a lot of people I know use melatonin. Melatonin is the natural chemical in your brain that puts you to sleep. So things like screens, like your phone, computers, those sorts of things prevent melatonin from turning on, which is why people have a hard time falling asleep after they've been on their phone or computer. I know some phones have a night thing now where you can wear glasses to prevent that light from getting in. Sleep, you're not going to get to sleep. Missing one or two nights of not getting enough sleep it's not going to hurt you. It's prolonged that can cause the damage. Okay, another sleep problem is sleep apnea. It's apnea, sleep apnea. This is when people wake up, they fall asleep normally, and then they stop breathing because it's an obstruction in their air passages that cause this. So what happens is they'll be sleeping and then they'll go, and then they'll have to catch their breath. And they can do this 100 times a night. So you can imagine if that's happening all night long, you're not getting a good night's sleep. Most people with sleep apnea don't realize they have it. It usually takes a partner to point it out because you're sleeping away. You don't realize that you're waking up because you can't breathe, but your partner hears you keep going throughout the night and wakes them up. So then they tell you, you go to a sleep lab, they have you sleep, they watch your brain waves, they see what happens. If you have sleep apnea, they give you what's called a CPAP machine, and it helps put oxygen in, so then you can sleep more through the night. Narcolepsy, it's NARCOLEPSY, narcolepsy. Narcolepsy is interesting in that with narcolepsy, the person is going along talking just like I'm talking, no problem, and then they fall asleep. And the narcoleptic episode lasts about 15 minutes, and then they wake up. Okay, so it just happens. They often don't really know often when it's happening. They can be in mid-sentence and then wake up and go back to it. Okay, we know it. The only thing we really know is that it's REM. It's probably connected to REM sleep in some way, because when they go into a narcoleptic episode, when they're just going along and everything's fine and they fall asleep, they go right into REM sleep. They don't go through non-REM sleep, just right into REM sleep. If this, you won't have an. This is a good time again to watch the other video on sleep. It's going to explain a lot of things, and it's kind of interesting. You'll learn a lot about what sleep can and can't do. The next lecture, we're going to go into drug use, altered state of consciousness, drug use, and hypnosis. I'm trying to find the video that I can give you for hypnosis as well. Those are kind of fun as well. The possible essay question for this section, all of those are and what they do, and how Freud saw